Okay folks, what we have here is a whole bone-in ham. We've got the shank half, we've got the butt half. One thing to note on here, there's a bone right here. It's facing the direction of my finger. It's called the H bone. It's basically part of the hip bone, but it's something to keep in mind. We'll talk about that later. The bone in this ham, the femur bone, which you've all heard of, runs just like this right here. Runs kind of odd, so it runs perpendicular to the H bone and then up to the shank. So here's the femur bone. We're going to always want to cut crossways to the femur bone. So check this out. Here's a butt half ham. Remember we talked about that H bone? Here it is again. And look how we cut this face off parallel to that. So right now I'm going to take the big hunks of meat off of here. I'm going to do it rather quickly so we don't cool the ham off too much. So you see what I'm doing here? Watch out if you put the knife towards your body. Get these big pieces off first. Trim them up a little bit, get the fat off so your guests don't have to. It's kind of normal, you're going to have some internal fat on this product. These other pieces I'm going to kind of follow the seams, the natural seams of the muscle. I'm going to take these hunks off as large as possible so I can cut them up for the guests and keep it hot. Take some fat off. Once again, I'm going to cut these bigger pieces off and get them ready to go for later. So again, I'm going to cut cross grain to the muscle. Cut it thick or thin as you like. Generally thinner is a little better, like maybe 1/4 inch. Try to work relatively rapidly to keep the meat warm as possible. If you're a slower carver, that's okay, you can't do it wrong. Put the product back in the oven. Keep it warm for your guests so it doesn't get cold. Try to put it on the plate in an appetizing presentation so your guest can enjoy the presentation as much as the flavor and the aroma. So I'm working relatively fast to keep the product warm as possible, which is about 130 degrees is ideal. The ham's already cooked. You don't have to overcook it. Just got to warm it up. Keep it moist by covering it in a pan with tin foil or a lid. Again, some of these pieces get small. Cut the bigger ones now. Do the small ones later for soup or seasoning or whatever. Depends how many guests you have. If you got enough meat for your guests, just stop there and do this later. So this is the best part of the ham, the most flavor. You're going to have some waste on this, but it's really not waste. It's going to be some odds and end pieces, maybe not good for a sandwich, more good for eggs, more good for salads, especially good for bean soup. So you're going to end up with a pretty good sized piece of bone here with some good meat on it that you can use for you can use this for bean soup. That goes right into a pot with some green beans or some navy beans, and it's good stuff. There's a lot of flavor there and a lot of food on there yet. So be patient, you can't do it wrong. You're going to get a lot of little pieces here that aren't as easy to cut up and trim, but you're going to have a lot of good food too that you put on your table and be proud to serve your guests. Enjoy.